Interlude, Isabel and the Dragon. Daddy, are we almost there? She was getting impatient sitting in the back seat of the car. Her parents told her they would be having dinner at their old friend's house. We're almost there, sweetie. I still don't know why we have to go to this stupid place anyway. She was pouting. Her mom sighed. We told you we're meeting some of our old buddies. It'll be fun, and plus it is the best way to exchange information about our work. Isabel's mom and dad were always trying to find old books, and they met with other people that had similar interests. Plus, they have a little girl too. In fact, I believe their daughter will be entering the third grade next year as well. Isabel did not care about her parents' friends or their friends' kids. She wanted to go home. Thusly, she answered only with a harumph and continued to pout. Finally, the car slowed to a stop in front of someone's house. Isabel looked out of the car and wiped the sleep from her eyes. As she did, she realized how remote a place the house was in. The closest houses were a distance off. She saw a pond in the backyard and a forest a bit farther beyond that. Come on, Izzy, they are waiting. Don't call me Izzy. She followed her parents to the front door of the house. After a knock, it was answered. A man the age of Isabel's parents answered the door. Amy, Harry, good to see you. Always good to see you too, Lou. And who is this? Lou asked, leaning down with a wide smile directed at Isabel, who was still pouting. I'm Isabel. The man chuckled and led them into the house. May and I have already set the table, so we're ready to eat. Lou led them to a dining room. A large table was there, plates set before each chair. A woman the age of Isabel's parents and a girl her own age were already sitting at the table. After being seated, Isabel looked at the two dishes before her. One consisted of pork and vegetables. She took a bite. It was good. She continued to eat that. It's always great when we can all meet up like this. Have you had any luck completing your copy of the Pays d'Etudes? We found a few more pages, hidden away by certain sects. You know how hard it can be to convince some of them to share their secrets. Oh yeah, we know exactly what you mean. We got in a pretty sticky situation with a cult down in Louisiana. Had to summon a shoggoth to get out of that one. This was met by a cringe by all those knowledgeable enough at the table. The children remained unfazed. Isabel was finished with the pork and vegetables and looked at the other dish. It was tofu with some dark sauce over the top, and Isabel left it untouched until now. It did not look appetizing. She took a small bite of it. It was hot. Really hot. She dropped her fork and grabbed her glass. She must have drank half of it before the heat dissipated even a little. Isabel's dad laughed at this, even though he had only taken a few bites of his own plate himself, and he was red in the face and sweating. If you are finished, Zhao can show you around. Okay, Dad. Zhao took the opportunity to leave her seat. Let's go outside. Okay. Isabel was excited to do anything other than listen to her parents' stories and follow Zhao out the back door. I love it out here. Zhao inhaled deeply, breathing in the fresh wind. It smelled like pine. Do you like the outdoors? I missed your name. It's Isabel. And yeah, I think it's cool that there is even a pond here. Let's check it out then, Izzy. Don't call me Izzy. Zhao laughed at this, which annoyed Isabel a little. Okay, Isabel it is. Follow me. Next to the pond, Isabel saw that it was not too deep around the edge. She sat down and after taking off her shoes and socks, put her feet in the water. It was cool and felt nice. So the Necronomicon, huh? That's interesting. Have you ever used it? No, that's just something my parents do. I don't care about it. Oh yeah, well I can summon monsters just like my parents. Want to see it? It might scare you, so I don't know if I should. Hey, I could summon things like my parents if I wanted to. Don't act like I'm just a kid or something. Alright, alright. I'll show you what you're missing out on. Xiao closed her eyes in focus and began chanting words that Isabel did not understand. Isabel looked around and everything seemed normal. But suddenly the pond's shallow bottom seemed to deepen. The blue reflection of the sky that so shimmered on the surface of the water before gave way to what Isabel thought must be the entrance into a different world. The pond suddenly became unfathomably deep. Staring into that inky blackness gave rise into her imagination forms and figures strange and frightening. Suddenly the water that was cool and refreshing before was causing Isabel's feet to numb and her mind to swirl. What if she were to fall into that void of that otherworldly dark? Would she become just another entry in some ancient tome like the creatures that her parents summoned? As these thoughts ran through her head, the form that Zhao summoned began to rise out of that darkness. It was a large, though lithe, almost snake-like dragon. Isabel stared as if hypnotized as the dragon swam within that newly formed expanse. Rhythmically it swam, its body forming shapes such as an A or a circle, which it then curved back under. Its horned head then appearing within the loop, its strong jaws gnashing, showing its large fangs. Though not in intimidation, the dragon was merely showing off its surreal brilliance. Time did not seem to pass in that short period, and when Zhao eventually closed the book once again, it was as if the dragon and the expanse from which it came disappeared as soon as it appeared. Isabel found she was shaking, not as a result of fear or cold, but for an emotion she had no understanding of. She had looked into the unknowable, and she was physically and mentally in a daze as a result. A few tears were rolling down her face. She wiped his away before shakily standing and turning towards Zhao. Pretty cool, huh? Bet you wish you could do something like that too, right, Izzy? Don't call me Izzy. Isabel sighed as she finished telling her story. I could be a real brat back then sometimes. Zhao was always the more mature one, and really the reason why I started to take more of an interest in all this magical stuff. And she was always so close to her parents. Unlike me, I would always act like I was an adult who did not need my parents' help, but after that day I tried to learn all I could from them. The day that changed everything happened in high school. Both of our parents had come back from overseas where they were working together, only they brought back a madness with them. Whatever they had seen had changed them for sure. I think that I accepted that fact after visiting them, but I don't think Zhao ever did. One day she started to sound like them, with the same madness, only instead of being put into a mental institution, she disappeared one day. By working with Long, I hope to someday find her again. This feels like a conversation I had years ago with a friend in high school. I told him what I'll tell you. I want you to know that while the circumstances may be different, I believe most of us have lost something. You will never really be alone in that experience. Isabel looked back to Jason. He was sleeping. She chuckled before rising. She ripped the page out of her journal, drawing the image of a sigil writing the words "Protection Circle" at the top of the page. A parting gift. She put the page inside Jason's journal, turned off the lights, and locked the door behind her as she left. Part 2. Belly of the Beast. Where am I? On either side of him appeared a vast ocean. There was no end, no shore that he could see in which to land, merely the occasional lily pad. The land he was standing on appeared to be moving forward. He leaned down and felt at the ground in which he was standing. It did not seem to be earth. It was bumpy but smooth. It was gray in sections like scales, like crocodile skin. It was like he was riding on the back of some great crocodile. Jason found his way to the edge of the land he was on. He poked his head out over the water, looking down the side of the land. The land itself seemed to be comprised of what appeared to be crocodile scales, and in the distance he thought he could make out the shape of a crocodile leg, lazily pushing the land mass forward. Jason looked down and jumped slightly at his reflection in the water. He was wearing a strange snake head hood. The snake's open mouth was made wider by the unhinged jaw, and between those jaws, under those strong fangs, was Jason's own face. Jason. A woman's voice called out from behind him. He quickly stood back up and turned towards the voice. His knees shook at what he saw. It was a towering individual, at least a few feet taller than himself, and Jason shuddered as he began to recognize what must have been its face. It had the appearance of two snake heads that turned towards one another and attached at the nose, four large fangs jutting from the mouth, its two eyes centered on Jason. From the neck down, the monstrosity was more recognizably human in form. Around his neck was a necklace decorated with human skulls, and its skirt was comprised of a mass of tangled, writhing snakes. Jason, you have done well in your journey to and from Xibalba. I am Coatlicue, goddess of the earth. Her voice was kind, enough so that Jason almost felt regret for the fear he displayed towards her. Almost. Like the earth, I nourish and eventually consume all that exists in your world. The womb and the crypt are both my cradles. I have great pride in my earth, and I enjoyed seeing your struggle. In return, I'll give you a warning. More individuals will summon beings from what your colleagues call the Akashic. You who have entered and survived the underworld due to your willingness to fight, it is now time for you to move forward with the strength you have gained through the underworld and protect our earth. Thought I was done with weird dreams. Jason wiped the sleep from his eyes. He looked around the hotel room. It was so surreal. This was where he would be living for the next couple of days. They had contacted his mother and prepared a flight back to his home, but that would take a couple days. The official story, as Long worded it, is that his father had died in the cave due to an accident while spelunking. Jason prayed he would not have to memorize any more official stories. There was a knock at the door. Who could that be? The only person he knew here were Long and Isabel, but after the story of her past, Isabel had told him she had moved on. She left him with a new sigil in his journal, a protection circle that she used at his home. He went to the door and opened it. Is anything wrong, officer? There was a letter left for you at where your house was standing, he said while handing him the letter. I don't really know what to make of Chief Long's group. They act shady, they pay for this room, and then they left you here alone after all that went down. all without any real word of explanation of the local police, just word from higher ups. I don't appreciate it. I just want you to know you can still call the local station if you ever need anything. Jason got the impression Rogers neither trusted nor cared much for Chief Long or his group taking over the investigation here. Were you expecting letters? Who all knew that you were going to live with your dad over the summer? Rogers was clearly worried, more about the letter than anything else, and he wasn't hiding that interest very well. No, I wasn't expecting any letters, and I only told my friends that I'd be living with my father over summer vacation. He answered his questions quickly and honestly. Was that all you needed, officer? Yes, Jason, it is. There was an annoyance apparent in his tone. He was glancing down at the letter, clearly worried about it. However, Rogers did not ask any further questions and closed the door before leaving. Jason was being honest. He had no idea who the letter came from, but his curiosity was piqued. Jason sat at the counter to read the letter. He saw that it had already been opened, probably by Rogers. He ignored that and began to examine the contents of the letter. To you have been introduced to the Akashic. I give you a chance to learn more of the art. Just meet me at the baseball stadium in town. My regards, fellow pawn to the will of the Akashic. The words were typed cleanly on a piece of typing paper. Included in the letter was a ticket to a baseball game. It seemed to be between two local teams, the Bears versus the Panthers. Should I go there? Jason already knew the answer. To question whether or not to go would be but a formality. As soon as he read it, he was set on going. Perhaps he inherited his father's compulsion towards searching for the unknown, and Jason had not experienced anything as strange and unknown as the Akashic. Fear, curiosity, and aspiration mixed, pushing him forwards. He was at the front door and on his way to the ballpark. Now that Jason was staying in that hotel, he was in comfortable walking distance to the ballpark that was in the center of town. It was a nice park, a stone archway leading into the stadium. The LED lights on the outside said the name of the teams. Whatever anxiety Jason felt walking over there was gone now. It was a very public place. If someone was going to try something here, it probably wouldn't be the smartest of places to try it. A man approached holding a sign. He didn't know how he had not seen him before, holding that large of a sign. Was he a doomsayer of some sort? Hello, Jason. How are you doing? Who is this man, and how does he know my name? I just felt it necessary to tell you, due to the certain precarious nature of the situation, about Apollyon, an archangel, translated as destroyer in English. That's about all, Jason. Have a good one. While pondering the words being said to him, the man somehow disappeared back in the crowd behind him. After having his ticket inspected, he began to walk in through the stone archway. It was a tunnel that led to the seats. A light overhead lit the way. It seemed to be local teams, and the game was just entering the first inning as Jason arrived. There was only a couple hundred people in the stands, which is a lot for sure, but there were large gaps in the stadium seating. It could probably seat thousands. The concession stand was open, which was nice. Jason bought a large cola, and an iced drink was refreshing in that heat. Jason could not imagine playing baseball under this scorching sun would be enjoyable, but the players on the field seemed to be going at it. Jason looked around the ballpark. He had no idea who he was looking for. There was no way of identifying the person who had left the letter. At least no form of identification was left with the letter itself. He saw someone else who seemed to be looking around as well. It was a young man Jason would guess around his own age, and they caught each other's glance. The man had short brown hair that was held back with a thin black headband, pale skin and dark eyes that even from the distance between both of them seemed piercing to Jason. The man shifted the book he was holding from his right to his left, raised his right hand pointing his fingers at him in the shape of a pistol, and then jerked the hand backwards to pantomime recoil. He then started down the steps. The man was standing on the stadium beside the one Jason was on. If Jason walked down too, they could meet in the middle. Jason hurried down the steps as well. However, when the man reached the bottom of the steps, he turned into the tunnel instead of waiting for Jason to meet him. Strange, Jason thought, but he merely followed him into the tunnel. He knew he had to be the guy, that sign of recognition when they looked at each other, and Jason could not help but equate the dark leather-bound book the man was holding to Isabel's and the one she gave Jason. However, the man kept walking, not stopping until he cleared the exit of the stadium. Turning around and muttering words, he seemed to be reading out of the book. Jason was worried now. He began to sprint towards the exit where the man stood. Whatever he was reading from that book could not be good. The man smiled back at Jason running through the tunnel. There was something growing that was closing the archway, closing the exit off. What it was, Jason could not tell. He only saw it as a dark silhouette at the end of the tunnel, and all he knew is that it was closing fast. By the time Jason reached the exit, it was solid. Suddenly, the light on the top of the tunnel went out behind him. Jason turned around and began running back in the direction of the stands. The people in the stands and the players on the field were all standing fast, staring up towards the sky. There was some substance closing over the top of the stadium, blocking out the sky and sunlight. The fields and stands were becoming ever darker, shadowed by the covering. The substance covering the top of the stadium had to be the same that Jason had saw covering the exit. Jason ran into the stands, frantically looking around. There was nothing he could do. There was large open space at the top of the stadium where the concessions were. He climbed quickly up the steps in that direction. He flipped his journal open. Thank God for Isabel. She had left him with a copy of the protection circle in his journal. He had a marker. Chalk probably would have been better for the concrete floor underneath, Jason thought, but all he had was a marker. He quickly sketched the protection circle on the floor around him as the sunlight slowly dissipated. By the time he finished the circle, the sky was completely blocked. It was pitch black. Jason struggled to make out anything of his surroundings, but it was a futile effort. All was lost to shadow. What remained was his frightened, conscious mind adrift in that inky darkness. There was a deprivation of all senses save for hearing. That sense was being assaulted by frightened sobs and the yelling out to others in the darkness. There was no safe way of finding one another in that darkness, and he heard the sounds of some poor individuals that were sent crashing down the stadium steps when they were attempting to navigate. Jason tried to tune out the sounds that were being made around him, and he dared not move out of his circle. Suddenly the lights surrounding the stadium lit up. The substance covering the top of the stadium becoming a glowing light shining downward. There was a tangible joy in the air after being released from that darkness. However, now that the lights were on, they gave rise to several questions. Why were the lights on? What was to come next? What was the end goal of the person imprisoning them? The only thing Jason knew is that the person who had trapped them there was on the outside, and his first goal he already accomplished. It was me he was trying to trap. Some of the players were still on the field looking around at each other or towards the sky. Jason had no hope that any exit was left open, and so he stayed safe in his circle. Suddenly there was a scream from the field. Jason stared in horror. The players on the field were thrashing there, bodies about and screaming as if trying to be freed from some grip. They were being pulled downward, towards the ground. No, into the ground. It was not as if a hole had opened in the ground. It was not like quicksand they were sinking in. The earth itself was pushing itself, little at a time, like a caterpillar or an inchworm, up their body, and where it touched it was fastened for good. It then actively, agonizingly pulled them into the ground. The thrashing was stopped as the body was rendered immobile by that constricting earth. The screams, however, continued a while longer. However, those screams became coughs and gags as they aspirated on dirt and rock. That living earth found its way into their mouths, muffling their screams before quieting them for good. The men who were before enjoying America's favorite pastime were now consumed by the ground itself. The ground we unthinkingly put our trust in. Jason was sitting on the seemingly safe concrete of the stands. Terror and dread upon seeing this sapping all energy from him. The light from above them seemed to be working as spotlights, like the kind used to signify important actions in a play, had made sure that the horror was the center of everyone in the stadium's attention. Hello. Jason was not sure from where the voice was coming from, and as he looked around he noticed everyone else was just as confused as he was. Hello? It was louder this time. The voice was certainly disembodied, and everyone was aware of it, but had no idea as to how to respond. Eyes up here, everyone. Everyone was still looking around. Up, up. The voice was getting progressively more annoyed. Jason looked around. Some people were still as confused as he was. Some of them were looking up at the sky. Jason looked up and his heart sank into his gut. In the sky, on that covering that blocked the view of the sky, was Jason's own face, just floating there. This couldn't be good. No one was looking in Jason's direction, but he was not going to bother trying to cover his face. They would just draw attention to him immediately. He would just let things play out as they were going to. He was powerless. You see this man? Give me him. His blood. Kill him. Or throw him to the center of the field so I can deal with him. That is my command. Jason remained sitting still in that circle, but his mind was flooded with thoughts. That was the plan, turn everyone in the ballpark against me. What a sinister assassination plot. Using a monster in order to trap everyone and then use them to dispatch of me for him. The Akashic is becoming increasingly more mysterious. The more I learn how little I know. I've only found just how deeply monstrous these beings can be, and how deeply monstrous the people who summon them can be. Who Who are you? My name doesn't matter. Right now I am in control. Right now I am your god, the voice said, trying and failing to stifle his laughter. And if you follow my command, you'll be freed. Sent back to your daily lives. That is my promise to you. Jason stood still, watching the mob of people search the stadium for him. He said nothing, but he knew it was just a matter of time before they found him. Someone in the middle of the stands grabbed someone roughly by the collar, examining his face. I think this is him. Help me get him, everyone. No, I'm not him. His brother, Jason presumed it was the man's brother, also tried to reason with them. They were both beaten bloody by the crowd in response to their struggling against them before being thrown to the field. No, neither was him, the voice called back down. However, that did not stop the ground from greedily consuming the both of them without so much as a fight. The two of them must have been dizzy, still reeling from the beating they had received. Jason tasted iron, biting into his lip as he watched this. He was otherwise emotionless. Too much horror had already numbed him. He was merely waiting for them to turn on him. Hey man, why are you just sitting over there? You hear me? His question trailing off as he examined Jason. He looked Jason up and down like a specimen. Jason just sat there. The man walked forward to get a closer look, see if he was the one. He began to reach out towards him to grab him, but his grasp was blocked by the protection circle. What the hell is this? I think I found him! He yelled, beating his fists against the force field, increasingly agitated. Jason, is that you? Jason was not relieved to see Officer Rogers. He must have followed him. I've put both of us in this situation. The man who was yelling took a step back, momentarily taken off by a newcomer. If there is any way out of this situation, we should think of it now. Is there anything you know that I don't? Is there any way to return order to... He was stumbling through the words. Jason knew Rogers was a good person who just wanted to put an end to this situation in the most peaceful way possible, but he was just as powerless in this situation as Jason was. Jason sympathized with him. He was becoming accustomed to feeling powerless. The man came back to resume testing the protection circle, but Rogers stepped between him and it. Okay, let's discuss how we move forward here, peacefully. Get out of here, Rogers! What the hell was he thinking? These people were after blood. So you with him? You heard the voice. You know what we have to do. I'm telling you to stop, and think about this. I'm saying this with the authority of the law. There's only one authority that matters to me, and it resides up there, and you don't speak for it. The man grabbed Rogers, pushing him forward, trying to pull him to the ground. Jason could not follow who was winning the fight as they turned over and over after the tackle. There was a thunderous sound that caused everyone to go still, as if time froze an instant. It was a gunshot, but who had fired the gun? Jason saw Rogers on the ground, grunting painfully as he held the gunshot wound that was in his side. Rogers! The man who had fought with the officer had taken his pistol and shot him in the side. Are you okay? Jason knew the question was stupid, childish even. The man was bleeding from his side. Of course he wasn't all right, but he was alive. There was another thunderous sound. Rogers stopped squirming as his head flew back against the pavement, a mist of red flying upwards. No! What the hell is happening? The man with the officer's pistol pointed it directly towards Jason. Jason covered his ears. Another gunshot. Why? Someone help me! Jason cradled his head in his arms. Another gunshot. The bullets flew away, deflected by the circle. No! Help! Help me! Kamazats! There was a loud crash. Jason looked up to see the giant beast Kamazats in front of him. He reached out to the man in front of the protection circle. There was a clang, the sound of the pistol being dropped to the ground. The one who was wielding it being lifted from the ground, futile struggles against the behemoth monster. Kamazats raised the man above his face. The quick arc of the thumb's claw in the man's neck was split open. Crimson blood flowed down into Kamazat's mouth, dribbling down his chin. He threw the body aside. It was worthless to him. He fed not on flesh, but upon that red liquid that constituted life force itself. He did not really even need to drink it, only knew it was spilled by him, or for him, in his name. Jason looked at the destruction around him. The result of his actions, his summoning of this monstrosity, was responsible. He stepped out of the circle and walked towards that monstrosity. Jason grabbed tightly onto its leg and pointed upwards as an order. Jason held on as Kamazat spinded his strong legs and jumped upwards, a startling leap. Large black wings continued that momentum, carrying Jason higher and higher. Kamazat's arms thrust forward, claws ready, and began ripping into the covering of the ballpark. A bright sunny day and a gentle wind greeted them on the outside. The beast that was summoned to swallow the ballpark imploded below them like a balloon popping. There was a crowd below, heads craned up looking at them in the sky, but there was only one person down there that he was worried about. The person responsible for the madness that just occurred. Jason reasoned that he had to be at least in some close proximity, due to him speaking to them while they were trapped inside that place of desolation, that living prison. Jason surveyed the area below. There was nothing left where the ballpark used to stand. All of it was gone. What was left looked like an impact site of some sort. A convex domed crater. All else was eaten by what that man had summoned. The building, the people, gone. Jason was ignoring the people's shocked reactions below, scanning the crowd. Someone was walking away from the scene, back turned to Jason with a slight hunch as if to shrink himself. It appeared as if they had a book tucked under one arm. There he is. Jason's blood was boiling, rage seething out. Jason was waiting until the man broke away from the crowd, until there was a clear shot. The man broke out of the crowd and seemed as if he was making his way towards an alleyway. Now, Jason thought. As if reading Jason's mind, his intentions, Kamazat shot downward towards the man, who looked backwards and broke into a run. Kamazat's was faster. The crowd scattered, screaming in surprise, but none of them came between Kamazat's and his quarry. As they closed in, Kamazat's outreached his clawed leg, which shot through the man's chest as Kamazat's landed on the ground. The man's impaled body was thrust off with a jerk of the leg, corpse sent away in an arc before crashing into the ground unmoving. Jason looked around at all the shocked people running around. Away from him, he realized. Return, Kamazat's. The monster returned to Jason's journal. There was a loud alarm playing. Everyone stay calm. Return to your homes. Stay inside. Everyone stay calm. A repeating phrase was playing louder over a speaker. Jason looked around as the people around him were running away, back among the buildings in town. He saw Isabel helping an elderly woman leave the scene. There were other people he did not recognize doing the same thing, leading people away from the scene. He saw Long charging his way. He looked back at the location where Kamazat had thrown the mysterious man. Jason's blood ran cold as he saw empty ground. How could the man have lived? There was no way that his lungs and his heart were not decimated by Kamazat's claws when he impaled him. He looked at the frantic crowd. Someone amidst them stopped and turned around at a distance. It was him. His shirt had a huge hole in it, but the man smiled cheerfully and mischievously at Jason before pantomiming a pistol with his hand and returned to running with the crowd. Who? What is he? He was about to run after the man, but someone caught him by the arm. What the hell is going on, Jason? Jason shrugged his shoulders. He had no idea how to explain what had happened. He was confused himself. He looked past Long and saw that the man had disappeared into the crowd. Long gave an annoyed sigh. We will have a briefing later. Long was clearly tired. It's been one hell of a day. Jason realized there was just as much drama taking place outside of the ballpark as there was inside, as the sirens and that message over the speaker continued to blare. Jason was in the hotel room with Isabel again. He looked out the window as uniformed men and women beside their armored car handed packaged food and drink to the people lined up on the street. Behind this scene was the large crater. As soon as that creature covering the ballpark was spotted in the middle of the city, Long called a lockdown, quarantining the whole city. Jason saw the fear in people's eyes as he looked down at them through the window into the city. He saw their anger, too. What the hell did things look like on the outside? You'll probably never know. Power and reception was cut to the city as part of an effort to stop any pictures or video leaking out from inside the city. We have some generators for the hospitals and such, but we are really running down the clock here. Whoever summoned that beast is as stuck in this lockdown as the rest of the citizens. Whatever monster he summons will be as well. We'll find him soon enough. It's like a cage, Jason thought to himself. Is the man who summoned that creature trapped in here with us? Or we with him? It was no question for the everyday man and woman outside. They would be helpless against any monster summoned. Jason was only safer by virtue of Kamazat, but honestly, that did not make him feel much better about the situation. There was a knock on the door. There he is. She stood to answer the door. She opened the door and there was a tall, lanky man with short blonde hair that was combed in a way that, coupled with the black suit he was wearing, made him appear to be a businessman. Hey, Isabel, glad to see you again after such a while. Too bad it had to be under such shitty circumstances. Good to see you too, Simon. Is this Jason? Looks as if this guy already knows me, Jason thought, feeling once again like he was left out of the loop, carried by events and barely finding a solution to save his life in the situations he had found himself in. His solutions to the nightmares he has faced thus far have been disastrous. Tell me about this guy you saw, Jason. What did he look like? What he caused? Jason began describing the man who had summoned the monster and the events that had taken place. The story was getting quicker. He had already explained the situation to Long and Isabel. Simon just listened intently, and after Jason was finished, looked at Isabel and nodded. Sounds like Jonah. You can tell him about Jonah if you want. He's just as tied up in this mess as we are at this point. I'm going out to see if I can find any leads on how to find this guy. Just watch out the window for anything strange. We have guards stationed all over. Like I said, reception was cut, so phones are a no-go, but we can keep in touch with this. All of the officers have one. Isabel put a radio transmitter on the table, and with a wave goodbye, walked out the door. They sat quietly for a while next to the large window over the center of town. There were several different crowds of people, the officers staying in their particular stations. The residents of the town staying away from them as best as possible, and the officers respected them by remaining in their station positions for the most part. When an officer did have to walk through the square, past the citizens, Jason noticed the glares they were given, the hushed whispers the residents gave to one another. Jason did not blame them. He knew the anger one could feel being in situations beyond their control. Hey, Jason, you have the right to know about my history with this case, how this perpetrator came to be. Jason just nodded in response, playing more nonchalant than it really was. He was ready to be given any information about the guy who had created that crater outside. Jason remembered how the man walked away like nothing happened after being impaled by Kamaza's claws. What could be that guy's deal? This was only a little over a year ago, and we have been trying to catch him ever since. Him and Isabel's friend, who also went missing shortly after the events. It's funny, me and Isabel were around the same age as you when this happened.